From raw cherries to a sniper's bullet, today we're covering how every US president passed away and what they said in their final moments. Spoiler, some left a historic line, others just complimented some soup. Let's go in order. How US presidents died, strange illnesses, stray bullets, and final words.
George Washington, our first president, caught a bad chill after riding his horse through a snowstorm, and it likely developed into epiglottitis, inflammation of the small flap of cartilage at the base of the tongue. Today, that's a quick fix with antibiotics. Back then, doctors turned to bloodletting, literally cutting the arm open and draining blood by the pint. It only made things worse. Washington is believed to have lost around 80 ounces of blood, close to 2.5 liters. He told his doctor, "I die hard, but I am not afraid to go." And as breathing became impossible, his final words were, "'Tis well."
John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. This one isn't just a medical story, it's almost eerie. The second and third presidents died on the very same day, July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed. They started out as close friends and co-authors of the Revolution, became bitter rivals after the election of 1800, spent a decade not speaking, and then reconciled as pen pals late in life. On his final night, Jefferson asked, "Is it the 4th?" He was told not yet and held on one more day, dying with the words, "No, doctor, nothing more." Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Massachusetts, the frail 90-year-old Adams, unaware his old friend had died hours earlier, whispered his own last words. Thomas Jefferson survives.
James Madison almost completed the same eerie streak. As congestive heart failure took hold, doctors tried desperately to keep him alive until the 4th. Offered a stimulant by his niece, he replied, "Nothing more than a change of mind, my dear. I always talk better lying down." He died on June 28, 1836, just days short of the date.
James Monroe. He made it, becoming the third president to die on Independence Day. Heart trouble, worsened by tuberculosis, finally caught up with him. His last words were about missing his old friend Madison. "I regret that I should leave this world without again beholding him."
John Quincy Adams didn't die in bed. He collapsed on the floor of Congress. While casting a vote, he suffered a massive stroke, grabbed his desk, and went down right there on the House floor. His final words, "This is the last of Earth. I am content." Andrew Jackson, a duelist who survived an assassination attempt and beat his attacker with a cane. You'd expect a dramatic ending. Instead, tuberculosis, heart trouble, and dropsy, fluid buildup in the body, wore him down. Surrounded by family at the end, the tough old general turned unexpectedly gentle. "Do not cry. Be good children, and we shall all meet in heaven."
Martin Van Buren. Asthma and heart disease took the 8th president at his country estate. His cryptic last line, "There is but one reliance," was his way of expressing trust in God. William Henry Harrison holds the record for the shortest presidency ever, 31 days. He gave a 2-hour inaugural speech in freezing rain without a coat, and for over a century, people assume that's what killed him. Modern research suggests otherwise. He didn't fall ill until 3 weeks later, pointing instead to typhoid fever or septic shock, possibly from contaminated water at the White House. John Tyler, the only president whose death went officially unmourned by the nation. During the Civil War, he sided with the Confederacy. He died of a stroke, managing only, "Doctor, I am going." James Polk, gone far too young at 53, after contracting cholera on a tour of the South. His final words were a declaration to his wife. "I love you, Sarah, for all eternity.
Thank you for everything.
I love you." Zachary Taylor, possibly the most absurd death on this list. During a scorching 4th of July celebration, he cooled off with a bowl of raw cherries and several glasses of milk. Days later, he was dead from severe gastroenteritis. Poisoning rumors spread immediately given the pre-Civil War tension, but when scientists examined his remains decades later, they found no evidence of foul play, just bad food apparently. His last words? I am about to die. I have tried to discharge my duties faithfully. I regret nothing. Millard Fillmore. After a stroke, someone brought him soup. He tasted it and solemnly declared, "The nourishment is palatable." In plain English, it was good. Possibly the most unusual final review in presidential history. Franklin Pierce. The saddest story on the list. Weeks before his inauguration, his young son died in a horrific train accident, and Pierce never recovered. He drank heavily, became an alcoholic, and destroyed his liver. He died alone after losing re-election, so no last words were ever recorded.
James Buchanan, widely regarded as one of the worst presidents, presiding as the country slid towards civil war. He died of a respiratory infection. His final words, a resigned prayer. O Lord God Almighty, as thou wilt.
Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest presidents in history, was shot in the head by John Wilkes Booth while watching a play at Ford's Theater. His actual last words were almost mundane, a reply to his wife about what friends might think seeing them holding hands in the theater box. She won't think anything about it. Andrew Johnson. Deeply unpopular and nearly removed by impeachment, Johnson died from a second stroke while visiting family in Tennessee. Partially paralyzed, his final words were, "My right side is paralyzed. I want no doctor. I can take care of myself."
Ulysses S. Grant, the general who led the Union to victory, lost nearly his entire fortune to a financial swindle, then was diagnosed with throat cancer, likely from decades of smoking up to 20 cigars a day. Determined to leave his family something, he spent his final months writing his memoirs, even as the cancer ravaged his throat. His last word was simply water, his throat too dry to say anything more.
Rutherford B. Hayes died peacefully of heart failure in old age. His last words a tender thought of his late wife. I know that I am going where Lucy is. James Garfield. Just 100 days into office, he was shot twice at a train station. The wound itself wasn't fatal, but doctors probing it with unsterilized instruments, one even punctured his liver, caused massive infection. 80 agonizing days later, he died. His last words directed at his doctor, "Swain, can't you stop this pain?" Chester A. Arthur. Kidney disease and a stroke ended his life at 57. No definitive last words survive, though he's said to have whispered, "Life is not worth living." Grover Cleveland, the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, died of heart failure at 71, saying, "I have tried so hard to do right." Benjamin Harrison. The flu turned into pneumonia, and his lungs eventually gave out. His final words were almost a plea. "Are there any doctors here? Doctor, my lungs." William McKinley. Another presidential assassination. His killer hid a revolver under a handkerchief and fired twice during a public handshake. Doctors couldn't locate the bullet, and gangrene set in. His last words, spoken to his wife, "We are all going. God's will be done, not ours." His death is what finally gave the Secret Service permanent responsibility for protecting the president.
Theodore Roosevelt. Shot in the chest just before a campaign speech in 1912, he got up and delivered an 84-minute speech anyway, bullet still lodged inside him. He lived another 6 years, nearly dying again on a brutal Amazon expedition, before finally passing in his sleep from a blood clot at 60. His last words to his attendant? "Put out the light, James." William Howard Taft. Famous for the likely exaggerated bathtub story, but that's not what killed him. Years of extreme weight strained his heart beyond repair, even after he later lost the weight. He died of heart failure at 72. His final words were never recorded. Woodrow Wilson. Never fully recovered from a massive stroke suffered in office and lived his final years partially paralyzed. His last words compared himself to a broken machine. "I am a broken piece of machinery. When the machine is broken,
I am ready. Warren G. Harding. Battling corruption scandals, he went on a nationwide tour to rebuild public trust. The stress brought on pneumonia. Listening to his wife read the newspaper aloud, he said, "That's good. Go on, read some more," and soon after died of a heart attack.
Calvin Coolidge. Known as Silent Cal for saying almost nothing, he died suddenly of a heart attack. His last words were an ordinary greeting to a household worker. "Good morning, Robert." When journalist Dorothy Parker heard the notoriously quiet president had died, she quipped, "How can they tell?"
Herbert Hoover, the second president after Adams to reach 90. He died of internal bleeding, too weak by then for any last words to be recorded. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the only president elected to 4 terms, his health was collapsing by the last one. High blood pressure, heart disease, and the effects of childhood polio that had left him paralyzed from the waist down, all while shouldering the Great Depression and World War II. Sitting for a portrait, he suddenly said, "I have a terrific pain in the back of my head," and soon suffered a fatal stroke. Harry Truman. Pneumonia at 88 led to organ failure and a coma, with no last words recorded. Dwight D. Eisenhower. After a long history of heart attacks and strokes, he died at Walter Reed Hospital of congestive heart failure. His final words were direct, "I want to go. God, take me." John F. Kennedy, struck by a sniper's bullet while riding through Dallas in an open motorcade. Just seconds before the shot, his companion told him, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." And Kennedy replied, "No, you certainly can't." His final words. Lyndon B. Johnson died of a massive heart attack at his Texas ranch a decade after leaving office. As he felt it coming on, he grabbed the phone and said, "Send Mike immediately," referring to his Secret Service agent, but help came too late. Richard Nixon suffered a severe stroke at home in New Jersey at 82 and managed to cry out one final word, "Help!" before being rushed to the hospital, where he slipped into a coma and died. Gerald Ford lived to 93, dying peacefully at home in California from cerebrovascular disease. His family chose not to make his last words public. Jimmy Carter became the longest-lived president in history, passing away in December 2024 at exactly 100 years old. In his final weeks, he told his family he was ready to be reunited with his late wife, Rosalind. Ronald Reagan spent his last decade battling Alzheimer's disease, which meant no coherent final words were ever recorded. George H.W. Bush. Confined to a wheelchair by Parkinson's in his final years, his last phone call was to his son, also a president, ending with, "I love you too." And now for the wildest numbers of all. 8 presidents died while in office. 4 were assassinated. 4 died of natural causes. The youngest president to die was Kennedy at just 46. The longest lived was Carter at exactly 100. And the most unsettling coincidence in the whole list remains Adams and Jefferson, dying on the very same day, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence.